And don't forget to join us live in the new Sunday slot at 6 p.m. British time for the relaunched Transport Evolved panel show this weekend, when we'll be discussing these stories and more. I just hope that you'll really join us. Between now and then, I'm Nikki Gordon-Bloomfield, and stay juiced up! It's Friday, September the 5th, 2014. I'm Nikki Gordon-Bloomfield, and this is episode number 49 of TEN, Transport Evolved News for the week beginning September the 1st, 2014. It's official. After months of speculation and a hard-won fight between the states of Nevada, California, New Mexico, Texas, and Arizona, Tesla has finally confirmed a site outside Reno, Nevada, will be the location of its first massive lithium-ion gigafactory. As you might remember, rumours that Tesla was working on the Reno site began earlier this summer, shortly followed by a confirmation from the Californian automaker that Reno was indeed among one of several potential sites. Until yesterday, however, the site was just one of those several locations being simultaneously developed by Tesla in an attempt to avoid any delays in the building of the 1,000-acre, 50 gigawatt-hour lithium-ion processing facility. With the site now chosen, all Tesla has to do is build the factory and get it up and running in time for the debut of its 2017 Tesla Model 3. So expect Reno to get a rush of new residents as Tesla accelerates development the same way its Model S leaps from 0 to 60. Georgia has become the latest battleground in a seemingly never-ending war between Tesla and auto dealer associations keen to put a halt to Tesla's direct-to-customer sales model. Late last week, the Georgia Automotive Dealers Association petitioned state regulators to revoke Tesla's existing sales licenses within the state, claiming that Tesla improperly obtained its dealer licenses by exploiting a loophole designed for custom car builders who sell less than 150 cars a year. In response, Tesla says it hasn't broken any rules, and it seems to be as happy to go to court if needs be as it has been in other states where its sales model have been questioned. In one of the fastest growing electric car markets in the US, however, we think Tesla has a good chance of winning this particular battle. He's one of the most pro-electric car mainstream auto industry executives we've ever seen, has worked for Nissan since 1991, and once famously defended claims that electric cars were dirtier than petrol cars by calling the accusations bullshit. But in a surprise move this week, Nissan's executive vice president Andy Palmer announced he would be leaving the Japanese automaker and heading to become CEO at prestige British automaker Aston Martin. Well, he's had many roles over the years within Nissan, first concentrating on its commercial vehicle segment. Andy Palmer became well known to Nissan Leaf owners for his candor and willingness to discuss electric vehicle policy, design, and, when it happened, problems. We wish Andy all the best in his new role and hope that he manages to sneak some all-electric fun into James Bond's favourite brand. US-based car charging group, owners of the Blink network of public charging stations, announced a switchover this week from charging customers per hour for the electricity they used at charging stations to per kilowatt hour. The switch, only possible in states where it is allowed to resell electricity, means that those with older electric cars with slower onboard chargers will find that using the Blink network to charge their car will now cost less than it once did, since they're now being charged according to the actual electricity they use rather than how long they've been plugged in. Those in states where Blink isn't allowed to charge per kilowatt hour are getting a worse deal, however, with some states like New Jersey prohibiting the real sale of electricity per unit energy. In those states, a price increase in per hour use will mean that electric car owners will end up paying more to recharge, so do check your local state rules before getting too excited. The 2015 Volkswagen Golf GTE, VW's first mass-market plug-in hybrid, had its European launch this week, along with the official German market pricing. At €36,900, including purchase tax, the Golf GTE costs just €2,000 more than its all-electric sibling, the e-Golf. But where the two cars differ is that while the e-Golf is a fabulous, competent all-electric commuter, the GTE has been engineered to give Volkswagen fans a GTI feeling without the poor fuel consumption which comes with that particular car. Capable of 0 to 62 miles per hour in 6.7 seconds, the GTE features a 1.4-litre turbocharged stratified fuel injection engine, married to a 75 kilowatt electric motor and a 6-speed DSG gearbox. I've just got back from a day of driving it in the Swiss Alps, so expect a first drive report early next week. In the meantime, though, we're curious of what you think of its limited 30-mile electric-only range, plus 500-plus miles of total petrol range, and plus its electric capabilities, plus the news that it's highly unlikely to make it into the US market. Let us know. Unless you've been under a rock this summer, you'll have heard of the internet sensation that is the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. But have you heard of the all-new EVSE Ice Bucket Challenge? No, we hadn't either, but Californian firm eMotorworks held the inaugural EVSE Ice Bucket Challenge this week by submerging one of its home charging stations in an aquarium of ice-cold water in a publicity stunt designed to show how watertight and weatherproof it really was. Ooh. As you might expect, the charging station, which was charging a car throughout the process, passed with flying colours, but now the firm has challenged Schneider and Bosch, two of its rivals, to see if their home charging stations are as durable and reliable by filming their own equipment taking the same challenge. We'll let you know if and when they do. FIA-approved race series Formula E might just be a week and a bit away from its inaugural race in Beijing, China, but it's still evolving the Formula E brand to make it an irresistible attraction to race car fans, old and new alike. And from March, if it isn't enough to go and watch the qualifying and races at a city near you, you'll soon be able to also take part in the Formula E Motor Show, a brand new concept designed to get fans into electric and hybrid cars before and after they've watched the Formula E race. Scheduled to run before and after the main race event in each location, the Formula E Motor Show will combine green car advocacy with the latest plug-in cars on the market today, so fans can try out an electric car for the first time after watching the electrifying excitement of the world's biggest electric car race series. Good idea. Nissan's e-NV200 Avalia electric van might be one of the most practical and versatile commercial electric vehicles on the market today, but as Euro NCAP test results revealed this week, it isn't one of the safest. Undergoing the full suite of European crash tests, the e-NV200 Avalia, which is suited to life as a zero-emissions 5-seat taxi cab, scored a total of just 3 out of 5 stars. While interior passenger protection was generally good, the e-NV200 lost out in the magic 5 stars due to its poor crash protection for pedestrians and a very minimal set of advanced safety features. As you might expect, Nissan has remained pretty quiet about the issue, although we note its gasoline NV200 van scored the same in last year, 2013 crash tests, so here's hoping Nissan improves things for a next-generation vehicle, eh? They're popping up all over the world, are a great way to get up close and personal with a super fast electric car, and are causing a bit of a stir among the traditional auto dealer industry. But if you can't make it to a mall-style Tesla store, either because you're too far away from one or you're just too busy, you'll be pleased to know that you can now tour one virtually, courtesy of Google Maps. That's because the Westlake Avenue store in Seattle has just been given the Google Virtual Tour treatment, including a full 360-degree walk-in experience. You can even get inside a Tesla Model S and pretend you're about to buy one. If you're bored, can't get into a real Tesla store, or just like clicking on pretty pictures, it's well worth a visit. Check it out. That's it for this week. Don't forget to join us next week for another episode of TEN, and in the meantime, visit www.transportevolved.com for all the Evolved transport news that's fit to print. Subscribe to our channel and other shows on YouTube, and don't forget to join us live in the new Sunday slot at 6 p.m. British time for the relaunched Transport Evolved panel show this weekend, when we'll be discussing these stories and more. I just hope that you'll really join us. Between now and then, I'm Nikki Gordon-Bloomfield, and stay juiced up! It's Friday, September the 5th, 2014. I'm Nikki Gordon-Bloomfield, and this is episode number 49 of TEN, Transport Evolved News for the week beginning September the 1st, 2014. It's official. After months of speculation and a hard-won fight between the states of Nevada, California, New Mexico, Texas, and Arizona, Tesla has finally confirmed a site outside Reno, Nevada, will be the location of its first massive lithium-ion gigafactory. As you might remember, rumours that Tesla was working on the Reno site began earlier this summer.
I hear you, but I can't see you. I just have your photo.
Really sorry.
No, that's fine. You got a great smile.
We've got some new kit coming actually,
Okay.
which should have arrived by now. Unfortunately, it didn't. So we're not quite at the level we'd like to be, but we're getting there. We've now got the setup sort of halfway there. Got to finish building the studio, but it's good to be back. Everyone now at home should be able to hear me, excuse me, and see me. So here we go. Alrighty. Just want to make sure everyone can see me. Hello, everybody. This is unusual. A lot of people going, what? She's standing in a strange studio. Just give the regulars something to look at. We'll be right back. Okay, here we go. Okay, we're going live properly in. Oops. As soon as this damn page loads. Let me just pull. Rick, are you still there?
Yep, right here.
Just wanted to make sure I pulled the correct fader down.
Certainly.
That would have made for a very nasty start for the show. Here we go in 3, 2, 1. On today's Transport Evolved, we talk about the Tesla Gigafactory. Yes, it's going to be in Reno, Nevada. We also talk about what's going on with Blink charging per kilowatt hour rather than per hour and how that might be different in different places. And Nissan's Pro EV Andy Palmer goes to be the CEO of gas-guzzling Aston Martin. These stories and more coming up next on Transport Evolved. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to episode number 210 of Transport Evolved, recorded on Sunday, September 7th, 2014. Yes, we're back. I hope you like the studio. We're not quite finished yet with the studio renovations and tweaks and everything else. There are a few things that aren't quite right. There are a few little niggles here and there, but I hope that you will support and encourage us as we make those transitions. We've got a really exciting autumn or fall, as you say in America, which is why the title of today's show is Fallen. We've got some great things planned for the next couple of weeks and months, so please do stick around. Transport Evolved 2.0, if you will. We are going to be covering more in the world of green cars and future car technology. So not just electric, we're going to be doing everything. So think of us as covering anything that makes your car safer, cleaner, greener, easier to drive, and better for everybody else. So today we are going, back in time a little bit. We are focusing on electric cars today, but moving forward, we're going to be getting some great guests on. So if you know anybody who's an expert in future car technology, do get in touch and suggest them as guests for the show. Thank you for putting up with us over the summer hiatus. I'm not going to go into many details here, but we did have some family crises in the Gordon-Bloomfield family, and as thanks to everybody for their good wishes and support. It's been a very, very tough summer, but we're back, as you can see, and hopefully moving forwards, things will be very, very different. As you can see, we've had a bit of a change around. So just myself and one guest today, but coming up in the future weeks, we're hoping to have as many as 3 guests on per show. That does depend on the technology and moving forwards. But firstly, apologise to the chat room. You can't see me. Sorry, I can't talk to you today because I haven't got the chat room computer up and running. I'm too busy trying to run the new setup, so please forgive me. But there's a gentleman on the show today who is a very expert in the world of electric vehicles. Think back to a day before Tesla Motors. Think back to a time when electric cars and fast didn't really go together until this man came along, amongst some other pioneers, and invented something called the Tango. And it does take two to tango, but in this case, it's just one. Mr. Rick Woodbury, welcome to the show, Rick. How are you?
Hi, just great. Thank you for having me.
So tell me a little bit about commuter cars and what makes them so special. You've been running now for, what, 13 years, 14 years?
Well, 16 since we actually started the project. But
wow, 16 years, really?
Yes, we sold our first car in '05, but it is quite a difficult car to develop because of its size, and it needs to have all of the characteristics of a large car in the space of a motorcycle. So it's not been an easy project, but it's been a very worthwhile one.
Now, unfortunately, I don't have any photographs to show because this studio was taken all day to set up. But we can describe it, can't we? We can describe the commuter car, the Tango. It's a tandem two-seater vehicle, so one behind the other, 4 wheels. Like most
4
cars.
wheels, just under a meter wide.
Right. And tell us about the technical specs.
Sure. It actually, despite its small size, it weighs more than a Subaru Outback wagon. It's 3,326 pounds, or about 1,500 kilograms. It goes 0 to 60 in 3.2 seconds. It has 4 times more steel in the door than a Volvo. It's got a full FIA certified race car roll cage. And it has the fastest speed recorded by Consumer Reports through the emergency lane change maneuver. For the reasons stated above, I believe it to be the safest car in existence. And I think, crash protection is very important, and obviously we haven't slighted it a bit with all of the steel roll cage and the 3 horizontal bars in each door locked into the FIA cage. But more importantly is avoiding an accident in the first place. And a motorcycle, being very skinny, is able to avoid accidents that cars couldn't because it could go in between. It has options of traversing across a lane or getting out of the way if a truck comes into its lane, etc. However, it can't respond as quickly as a Tango. The Tango, you just turn and it instantly turns, whereas with a motorcycle, you have to counter steer. So if a child were to run out in front of you and you don't have time to think about, you've got more maneuvering time with a motorcycle even. But
now, you're narrower than a Honda Goldwing, aren't you? These cars are
by 5
narrower.
inches narrower.
Yep.
Same width as a typical Harley or police motorbike.
And I've not had the pleasure of riding or driving one, but I've seen other people behind the wheel. And because the batteries are low down, it's got an incredibly low centre of gravity, like all electric cars. But it seems to defy the laws of physics, doesn't it? So talk us about
it does,
because it's very tall and very narrow.
Yes, absolutely. But you have to realize that there's a 1,000 kilos underneath the floor, so it's really kind of like a lead go-kart, and then you've got this frame on top with the person sitting on top. So it's a very, very low center of gravity. It actually has a better rollover threshold than almost all other cars. It's the same as the 911 Porsche at 56-degree rollover threshold.
Wow,
so it just
that is
slides around
insane.
corners.
Yeah,
we added lead to do that.
So tell
me, it actually took a 1/4 inch of lead in the bottom of the box to add enough weight to the lithium battery pack to keep the 5-star rollover threshold rating.
Oh wow! So tell me, where did the idea come from? Because you've had this idea, you've been developing this idea for a long time now. And it comes, doesn't it, from I've heard you talking about in the past wanting to have the freedom of a motorcycle but the safety of a car.
Right. It comes from a frustration. And actually the original seed probably started in 1975. I read about a hydrogen-powered car in a Brazilian magazine that my wife left me. She wasn't my wife yet, but I was trying to learn Portuguese, and so I was reading a magazine in Portuguese about on a hydrogen-powered car, and I thought, wow, this is the future. And I did a lot of study of the hydrogen cars and found that the iron titanium hydride and other kinds of hydrides were a good storage medium, and actually hoped to build a car running on hydrogen someday. But never had enough money to do it, so it was just a daydream. So then in about, I think it was 1982, I was commuting in a Porsche between Beverly Hills and Hermosa Beach in Los Angeles area. And I was stuck in traffic. I looked around me and I saw only one person in each car. And I thought, my gosh, we should have narrow cars. We can get two to a lane. And then I thought, well, being a race car driver at the time, I thought, well, you can't have that. It'll tip over. And I thought, what if it was ballasted like a sailboat? And then the idea was born at that time. And from then on, I don't know, my son was probably 2 years old at the time. But as he grew up, he and I always talked about the narrow car, hydrogen car with ballasted by the hydride. But we just expected automobile companies to take care of it at some point. But it just never happened. So another catalyst happened. I got into building sailboats with my son after, he was in his late teens, and we were having a great time. And then at some point, I just pushed the limit too far. I had a 35-foot schooner over in the Sound, and I'm over there, and kids call up crying, saying, "Mom's leaving if you don't sell the boat." Well, we sold the boat at a profit, which is unheard of. That's where our luck began to change. And we invested in building this narrow car. And basically, we just took a Fiat Spider, 850 Spider, and we decided that it should fit, our new car should fit on the 3 foot wide by 8, I think we decided originally 7 foot long piece of plywood. So it'd be like a motorcycle.
Right.
And by the time we got done building it, it became 39 inches wide and 8 feet 5 inches long, which is 2.5 meters basically, so that it would still be able to park perpendicular to the curb like a motorcycle and not stick out any more than a truck would if it were parked there. So that was the logic behind the length. The width, it had to fit in a freeway lane, half of a freeway lane with more clearance than a truck has in a full lane, and it still had to have ample space inside. So I measured from the center of the steering wheel to the outside of the door in a Subaru, and I found it was 18 inches. So that meant that at 36 inches, we had the width problem solved. Like I say, by the time we added all the roll cage extra strength to the doors and so forth, it became 39 inches, but still under a meter and still narrower than a lot of motorcycles and a whole lot safer, obviously.
And of course, you don't need to have a you don't need to drive with a crash helmet on. It's exactly. A regular car, isn't it?
No helmet. You're not exposed to the weather. This has air conditioning and heat just like any other car, and more crash protection than any other car that I know of. I mean, we don't have airbags because it's a kit car, or the one we sold in England was an IVA certified car, individual vehicle approval, which is a kind of like our kit car rules here. So you don't have crash testing. Obviously, when you build one car at a time, you can't afford to crash test them. That's something for volume production.
You've just let the cat out of the bag here, because you've just told me that you had one that came over to the UK.
Yes, and unfortunately, I have it back now. But it was about a year in Exeter, and I'm so sorry that we didn't.
Because I live in Bristol, so that's what 80 miles away, so it's pretty close. But I'm coming
right through Bristol on my way to Heathrow to ship it back.
So I'm driving. Well, I'm flying over to Portland next year to live, hopefully. So I'm going to come and drive one because you're just north in Washington State, aren't you?
Right. Yes.
So, if anyone wants to find out more information about the car, then obviously they can go to the Commuter Cars website, can't they?
Yeah, commutercars.com is the original website. However, I'm not really good at HTML coding, and that one's a real pain to update, so it hasn't been updated much. But I did find a program that fits right into my capabilities, which is I've been in graphic arts for a very, very long time, and there's a program called Muse from Adobe that allows you to design just like you would in Quark Express or InDesign. So anyway, I've got a new website that's much better, all the pages that are completed at least. And cool. That's commutercars.co.nz. And that's because our biggest project right now is in New Zealand, Auckland, New Zealand.
Yeah, because there's actually a city in New Zealand that's in Auckland that they're trying to convince to turn... basically for everybody to lease commuter cars, right?
That's the idea.
Yeah.
Because if you lease them, the people aren't committed, but we still solve the traffic congestion, which is the reason that the Tango was designed. I'd like to tell a quick story, if I may.
Oh, sure, go right ahead.
the logic behind this, because it's absolutely overwhelming. It's just, I don't know how anybody can not understand this logic. But anyway, let's see what everybody thinks. The Boston Big Dig was a tunnel project that moves 130,000 cars a day from one point to another point. It cost $20 billion and took 20 years to complete. And it still has problems. But it only moves 130,000 cars from point to point. Now, if Tangos were built at 100,000 range, they could be built for $20,000 each, roughly $10,000 for the car, $10,000 for the battery. So at $20,000, you could give away 100,000 Tangos for free to those commuters, free, and still be 1/10 the cost and build them in 1/10 the amount of time that it took to build that tunnel.
Wow.
Now, that's an extreme situation, but guess what? Auckland has the same problem. They're looking at a town, at a city, I mean, of 1.3 million people, is all much, much smaller than our large cities here. And at 1.3 million people, they still think that it's going to take $68 billion over the next 30 years in order to keep up with the infrastructure. Now, while I was down there, I spent an hour and 45 minutes to go 25 kilometers. What's that, 16 miles or so?
Yeah,
it's just unthinkable. I mean, how can anybody put up with that? And yet, because everybody lives in suburbs, there's no way to get enough public transit in there. If you think the infrastructure to build roads at 68 billion is expensive, try building enough infrastructure to get everybody to work where they want to go, when they want to go on public transit. You'd be looking at hundreds of billions of dollars. It would be impossible, because when people are all spread out, there's no way to make any more convenient way than a personal car. But why does that car, when you're driving by yourself, need to be full size with 4 empty passenger seats? Well, it doesn't, and I've proven that very, very perfectly with the Tango. It's faster, it's more fun, it corners better, it does everything, and it's infinitely safer. You know, if a big truck or lorry comes into my lane and I'm in a Tango, I don't worry about it. I just accelerate and move over before you can even get into my lane. So I've just avoided that kind of an accident. If a full-size car is there, where are they going to go? You know, they can't accelerate as quickly and they can't move over because there's another car there. With this, you can filter a lane split. And I do it. I pass many thousands of cars lane splitting. And even in England, when I was in Exeter delivering the car, there was a 2-lane road going into a 1-lane across the intersection, and I went right between them. And I'm waiting there at the light. I could see the guy in the sports car next to me just saying, "There's no way you're beating me to this lane." And I watch this, you know.
And you got through.
I was across the whole street before he could even get out of the crosswalk. So it's pretty funny.
I know that moving forwards, I mean, this is obviously something that we need to think about in the future. And you know, obviously, when you came out with the commuter with the Tango, you were essentially the first really to have this idea. Since then we've seen the Twizy, which again is all electric. I used to own one. Great fun, not quite as perky, not as fast, definitely not as powerful. You know, you've got 2 motors in the Tango. But
the Twizy saves space, it's certain, but it's not narrow enough to double lane capacity.
No.
They're not narrow enough to sit 2 side by side.
Right.
So to me, that's a huge threshold that needs to be met in order for it to really solve traffic congestion.
And we've seen some other cars. I mean, Toyota's got this prototype electric car that leans. Yeah, the iRoad. I know it's coming. GM have been looking at it as well, and it obviously does kind of push into the future transportation solution where you might not necessarily own these vehicles, but you could have them at the railway station to meet you as you get off the train. So you have a multimodal solution. You know, you drive from your home, maybe in the country, maybe in the suburbs, to the train station. You park up. If you've got an electric car, you plug it in to recharge. You get on the train. When you get off at the other side, you either hire a bicycle or you hire one of these lane splittable vehicles, and you go to work. And it's a very, very sensible solution. Let's move on and discuss some of the news this week. The first big story really comes from Nevada. The last episode we have, which was August 1st, episode 209, we talked about the Reno, Nevada Gigafactory site. And we had the wonderful Bob Tregilis on, who is a Reno local, and he told us about some of the potential for the Tesla Gigafactory site in that location. this week, Tesla did finally confirm that it was going to have the Gigafactory site in Reno was going to be turned into the first Tesla Gigafactory. We're talking 50 gigawatt hours of lithium-ion batteries per year. We're talking 1,000 acres. We're talking 6,000 employees. Now, the way that Tesla's going about this Gigafactory is different to a lot of situations with big companies where they build the building themselves and then they own everything inside. Tesla's kind of turned this into a warehouse, a collaboration between all of the companies it needs to make those battery packs and deliver them on time in a low-cost environment. Do we think, though, that Tesla is going to make that promise and make the Gigafactory in time to launch the Model 3 according to schedule for 2017? What do you think, Rick?
Well, I think they've had a pretty good track record of gathering the funds and making it happen. So it's pretty exciting. I mean, this is, if we go back to, Clay Christensen is probably the most expert person I know of, Harvard Business School professor who specialized in disruptive technology. And he pointed out that, in order to get an electric car to take over, to become a disruptive technology, it needs to do something that regular cars can't do. And so I've always felt up until now that the Tango is the only car that can actually do that. Unfortunately, getting the investors to see the light has been difficult. But this low kind of, it's kind of a slow progress in comparison. But you have electric cars actually becoming a better option than gasoline cars in many cases. Because you can get them so inexpensively, like $200 a month to lease a car. You're not responsible for the battery replacement and all of that. And if batteries become cheap enough, they become cheaper than gasoline. What's always bothered me about the electric car sales, the Leaf and Tesla included, is that they wouldn't tell you how much it would cost to replace a battery. So you don't know how that's going to affect your resale value at the end. So I've been very kind of skittish about that myself. I bought a Leaf anyway, and I thought, well, I'll take a chance. And luckily, recently, Leaf has said that they will sell you a battery pack exchange for $5,000. So if that's 100,000 miles and you actually do get that amount under warranty, that's 5-6 cents a mile plus your electricity at another couple cents a mile. Wait, it's cheaper than gasoline. So that's good. So all of a sudden, we've got something that it can do better than a gasoline car, and of course, at least in a lot of situations.
And of course, the Gigafactory is going to bring down the cost for everybody, because if Tesla's bringing down the cost of lithium-ion, we're now talking. I mean, the figure that everyone is kind of banding around, the figure that seems to be the one that's going to change everybody's world forever, is this $100 per kilowatt hour. That is an incredibly low price. We're not far off that now. People, in fact, started to think that maybe Nissan was getting close to that when it gave us that $5,000 price. Unfortunately, it's turned out that that Nissan has come out and said, look, unfortunately, we have we're making a loss on this, which is a shame, because it's just the nature of the volume and the chemistry and everything that it takes to build them. I mean, right now our cells are, they're $12,800 for a Tango with 32 kilowatt hours, which is considerably more than the Leaf. But that's $12,800, and by the time they're here from China, you're up to $15,000 roughly. So, that's the cost at extremely low volume. But I can see that cost. Well, it already has come down a lot. So it's, if we get 200,000 miles out of our cells, which they're supposed to according to the factory, then we're looking at 7.5 cents a mile. And if we get only 100,000, it's going to be 15 cents a mile. So it's still somewhat competitive with gasoline, or petrol. Moving on, staying with Tesla. This is kind of a Tesla segment. I'm not going to apologize for this. This is a kind of a Tesla segment. No intention of it being a Tesla segment, but I sent Michael a message, Michael Thwaite, who was going to be on the show, a message before the show, and said, can you just put some stories together for me, because this studio, just getting it up and ready in time, took a bit of extra time. The Tesla battle in Georgia, the auto dealer battle, has taken yet another turn. This time it's in Georgia. We've got the auto dealer unions in Georgia effectively petitioning the Georgian lawmakers or regulators to confiscate Tesla's dealer license that it had obtained. They're claiming that Tesla misused a loophole in the law designed for people who were making custom-built cars and only selling 150 vehicles per year in that state. Tesla said, no, we didn't. Obviously, this is just going to move forward. Now, the interesting thing to this is that Georgia is one of the fastest growing electric vehicle markets in the whole of the union right now. Thanks to primarily to Atlanta. Fantastic Leaf sales in that state. Lots of very, very pro Nissan Leaf dealers, lots of electric car advocates in that area. It's really seen a dramatic change over the last 12 months or so. I don't see the Georgia Auto Dealers Association getting what they want with this. A previous attempt by a Republican in the Georgian Senate to change Georgia's very generous EV incentives failed. Do we think that we're going to see this battle go to courts, go to the regulators, or do we think that there's just nothing that's going to happen here? Tesla and electric cars in general are just too popular.
Well, this argument isn't just about electric cars. It dates way back. I had a Porsche dealership back in 1980 or so, and I then worked for Beverly Hills Porsche Audi after that. Porsche, I met the president, and I was really on his side, despite being a dealer and should be on the other side of the fence on this. I agreed with him that the manufacturer should be able to sell direct and that they should be able to control the experience. Dealers are typically just middlemen that are really unnecessary in this process, in my opinion. And this isn't going to be popular among other dealers, but it's my personal view that an Apple store is a really good thing, and there's nothing wrong with being able to buy direct from the manufacturer and experience it the way they want to sell it. Now, Peter Schutz, who was president of Porsche at that time, and I had long conversations about this before he ever tried to go it alone. And he tried to set up a way to sell direct with Porsche, and the dealers overthrew him and they weren't able to pull it off. I also know Martin Eberhard, who was the co-founder. Actually, the original idea of the Tesla came from him. He went to Elon to get funding and so forth. But he warned me that in many states, don't sell Tangos through a dealer, because once you've done it, you won't be able to go back to selling direct. So be very, very careful. And I've heeded that advice. But the idea for me came back in the 80s. That this is a way to do it, not in the 2004 or 5, whenever I was talking to Mark.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because this is really people are saying, oh, it's about Tesla. The auto dealers are going, this is about Tesla. This is about not being able to protect consumer rights.
It's about whether dealers make sense or not. In my opinion, if they don't earn the right to do that, it doesn't make sense.
And also, it's about if Tesla gets approval to sell cars direct to customers, it's not going to take long before Ford, General Motors, Toyota, Nissan, they're all going to be doing it. Now, we have that here in the UK. We have dealerships that are owned by the car companies. And in a lot of cases, they are kind of the showcase stores. They're the ones that other people look to. But going back to your Apple Store comment, I've been using Apple computers since 1994, 95. My first encounter, I came from not a very wealthy background, let's put it like that, and we couldn't really afford a computer, and so it wasn't really until I went to school that I started to have exposure to computers. And being a music student, kind of Apples were the thing that music students got involved with. And I remember using the very early Macintoshes.
Same thing.
Exactly. And I got into Macs before they were cool, and I learned how they worked, and I fixed them for a bit as a student. And I got when I was at uni, that's how I made my money. I bought old Macs and built them up and sold them on. But people didn't buy Macs back then because they were cool and funky. They bought them because they did the job that they wanted to. It wasn't really until the advent of the Apple Store that people really started to change the way they thought about them. And as soon as it became a high street brand, as soon as it became something that you could go into, and the level of expertise that you have at the Genius Bar, and the level of service, being able to take your phone into a store and replace it there and then if there's something wrong with it. I know lots of people, myself included, who considered going to other pieces of technology. And the thing that stopped me was if this goes wrong, I'm going to be without this thing for 2 months while they fix it. Whereas it's the same with the Tesla store. You can take it in, there's somebody there who knows you, who knows the car, they've got the telematics, they know sometimes even what's wrong before the car gets there. They will give you an identical car or a better car than the one you have. It's none of that usual traditional auto dealer nonsense. Our Chevy Volt was in the shop recently, and it took an absolute mammoth task to get them to give us another automatic. We had to drive an automatic.
I know. I
gas
took my
car.
Leaf into the shop. I took my Leaf into the shop for the battery report at 15,000 miles. I'm going to take it in again for the 30. But I said, let me see the battery report, please. And it just said, all fine. You've been doing a good job. And I said, what? Where are the voltages and the temperatures of my cells? We have that. I mean, everybody who has a laptop can plug into a Tango and look at the voltage and temperature of every single cell at any time driving down the road during a drag race. Anytime you want, you can record it. It's just so easy to do. The electronics, the technology is all there. They don't let you see it. And they said, I said, what happens if one of them's bad or something? Well, the report will say there's a problem. And if it gets really bad, we'll have to call out the factory to come take a look at it. I thought, wow, that's really interesting. So anyway, it's just a totally different philosophy.
So,
to me, it's like everything that matters is take care of the customer, give him what he needs, keep him up and running. And if dealers can do that well, then they deserve to be in business. And if they can't, if all they're doing is trying to rake in the money and do as little as possible, then that's a sad way to be.
It is.
And I think nothing's going to happen very drastically all at once. I mean, Tesla maybe get a foothold here. Hopefully they'll be able to sell direct in all 50 states. And when that happens, it'll still be a very slow process because dealers will have to compete with the factories. And if they do a good job and they do their money's worth, they'll stay in business. Everything will be fine. It's like in the graphic arts business, which I also have. The business has changed drastically. People are doing it in-house, but there's still room to do the work. If you can do as good a job competitively with what they can do in-house, you still got business. If you can't, then that's too bad.
While we're on the subject of car dealerships, and before we go on to the final piece of the segment, I've talked about this before, and I just wanted to remind people about this. I don't know if anyone does listen to This American Life. It's part of the Public Radio International group. I'm just trying to remember where it's out of. I want to say it's out of Chicago, but I might be wrong. Anyway, This American Life, great podcast. You can get it online. There was an episode 129, Cars, and it actually followed a car dealership for a month, talking about how they sold the cars and how they, it was a used car dealership as well as a brand new car dealership. And it's very interesting to see how the way that cars are sold and the way that people think about cars is so different, so weird, so unusual. So certainly worth a look at if you haven't before. All right, final story of the segment. Tesla's Seattle store, one of Tesla's Seattle stores, is now virtual. You can tour it without leaving your home. The Westlake store. Have you been there, Rick?
I have not. I should do that.
So it's on Westlake North, I believe, in Seattle.
I know what that is. Sure,
just south of a park. I can't remember which one it is now. But anyway, just like Doctor Who's TARDIS, the White House, the Twitbrick House, and obviously the pyramids, you can now go in and tour the Tesla store in Westlake, Seattle, without ever leaving your home. So if you've never been in a Tesla store before, it's certainly worth doing. It's great publicity. I'm going to show you this now on here. I can't really show you very clearly, but it's on Google Earth, and you can have a little, have a little look around. This is a screenshot here from the store, and it's brilliant. And I think this is, I mean, obviously Tesla didn't do this as a marketing exercise. Obviously Google approached Tesla and went, how about it? And obviously Tesla went, yeah, that's a good idea. Someone walked in with a special bit of kit on that allows you to see 3D. But the cool thing about this one is you can actually get inside a Tesla Model S and have a look. Now there's a note inside the Tesla Model S on the passenger airbag cover. It's like a post-it note, and I've been trying to figure out what it says. So if someone can do that for me, that will be you'll make my day, because it's been going through my head all week. I've been trying to figure it out and I haven't been able to. If you are watching live, we're going to have a little ad break now. We're going to talk about Transport Evolved and what we do and how you can support us. Transport Evolved is currently funded by your donations. That's it. So if you want to support us and you want to see us do more of this, you want to see us actually turn our virtual studio from a virtual studio into a real studio. You can see my head. I keep disappearing, look, like that. If you want to see this become real and you want to help us build a successful network, then you can go to our website and make a monthly donation. Go to www.transportevolved.com, and on the right hand rail, on the right hand side of the page, you'll see a donate button, and you can make a monthly donation. Now, because we are founded obviously in future car technology and alternative fuels and electric cars, there are 4 levels of donation. They are appropriately named. There is a level 1, there is a level 2, there is a fast charge, and then there is a supercharge, depending on the amount that you'd like to give. And to those who already do donate, I am most eternally grateful to you. Please continue to keep donating, and we are building, we are saving, we are doing cool things. And as I say, every donation helps. If you can't afford to donate yourself, just tell everybody else about the show. We are close to nearly 1,000 subscribers now on YouTube, which is fantastic. And so we'd like to go over that. So the more you share us and the more you talk about us, the better it is. And thanks to everybody who's been talking about us over this summer. I've had some lovely emails from people who are telling us all the things they're doing and telling people about Transport Evolved as they go. So thank you. Moving on, Rick, we are going to be talking about the Mitsubishi Outlander plug-in hybrid. Now that's kind of the antithesis of the commuter car, isn't it? It's a large SUV, 4-wheel drive, it's got a petrol engine, it's also got 2 electric motors for all-wheel drive capabilities, it's 5-seat, room for the dogs, room for the kids, room for the kitchen sink. Very heavy vehicle, extremely popular over here in Europe. I mean, they've just literally been flying off dealer lots. And there aren't very many days that go by when I don't see one on the road. In fact, I would say that I probably see more Mitsubishi Outlander plug-in hybrids now than I do anything else. And while I am now seeing on average 3 or 4 other plug-in vehicles every day, I nearly always see at least one Mitsubishi Outlander. Now, it's not coming to the US in its current form, is it? Because it's not considered appropriate for the US market, I'm guessing. But they're going to debut the model, the Concept S, which is kind of a sexed up version of the plug-in hybrid for the US market. It's coming at the Paris Motor Show. Rick, do you think that Americans are gagging for a plug-in SUV like this?
I think they'll buy it. They're going to be popular. It's just that there's a tool for every job. You know what I mean? To drive one of those with a single occupant in commuter traffic is like using a sledgehammer to drive finish nails. But by the same token, if you make a semi truck electric, that's plug-in electric. You'd be charging it for 4 hours, drive it for an hour. I mean, you could get better than that, of course. But it doesn't make any sense. It's the wrong tool for the job, much like using a claw hammer to drive railroad spikes. So people do need large cars to take families out, and I think there's nothing wrong with having a large SUV like that. You go skiing with it, you take it out on the weekends, you go with the family to the ball game, whatever it is you want to do that takes the family. That's what that's for, and it hauls a lot of stuff, and it goes in any kind of weather, and it's just perfect for that. I think each tool has its application, and I just
Yeah,
think that
you're totally
commuting
right.
with one of those is the wrong tool for the job.
I mean,
Very
if
wasteful.
you live near the mountains, you want to go over the Rockies, that would be a perfect vehicle, especially if you did
Yeah,
skiing, winter sports, or maybe down on the beach. The thing that I'm hoping that this vehicle has for the US market that it doesn't have in the European version, um, I hope that there's better blending between the electric and the gasoline mode. When I had it on review, the thing that struck me most was that there is quite a harsh transition between electric and gasoline mode. There is also, it seemed to lack the ride quality and the finesse that you would necessarily expect in a vehicle of that price, and we are talking sort of 30 plus thousand,
right.
give or take. I mean, I think it's
Well, it
28
just
is
sounds
when
like
it starts.
for most people, the Tesla Model X would probably be the perfect,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just can't believe what they've packed into that amount of space. I guess it's a whole lot more money, but that's going the right direction. But
I think
the
it's
plug-in
also,
hybrid to me is, you've got a whole petrol engine and all of that, and on the other side of it, you've got to have enough batteries to go a distance that's worthwhile. Like with the Volt, for example. And to me,
yeah.
it's a lot of added complexity. And if you actually do an analysis for how much money you're going to save on fuel, it's probably not going to pay off very well. That's just my opinion. I
And
think,
it's quite,
pure electric applications, which are short range, it could be anywhere from taxi cabs to commuter cars to whatever is short range. Specialize in that. Work with pure electric for the job that gets done best with pure electric, and leave the petrol for long distance work.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that we are at a point at the moment, aren't we, where we have a situation with, certainly in Europe, people are buying electric plug-in hybrids because they are nervous about going fully electric. So this is in
Right,
some ways a crutch vehicle. We have a plug-in hybrid. And we
right,
made that justification to have an all electric and a plug-in hybrid because of my partner's job and family members that are getting older, and we wanted to be able to make that long distance trip. And actually, we recently did we actually had a family crisis over the summer. A family member was critically ill in hospital. I think
I'm so sorry.
it was a case of you need to come up to the hospital now. And it
Mm.
happened that we had a Tesla Model S on review that had arrived that morning, and I was able to make that trip in all electric mode from my house to the hospital in the middle of England, 180 plus miles, without having to worry about stopping for recharging, without having to worry about infrastructure. And that was kind of a bit of a game changer for me. And I wrote this
Yes,
this this guest post for the Green Car website talking about how if you are going to go in an all electric family, and that is, fully acceptable. People do it on a regular basis. I know lots of people who do it, and I'm very happy with it. But you need to have that kind of idea of what are you going to do when things go wrong. And it's
right.
not to
We have a
say that the
Dodge Ram
vehicles
pickup
are
truck,
yeah, it's not
for
to
that
say that the
situation.
vehicles it's not to say that the vehicles are not capable, but it's having that, okay, I can be a member of a car club, or I'm going to hire a car, or my neighbour's going to, switch cars with me for the day, and they're totally okay with that.
Right,
But being able to do that rather than not buying a car or buying a plug-in hybrid. A plug-in hybrid for that occasional long distance trip probably doesn't work always. But it's horses for courses. All right, moving on. Nissan ENV200. I love this little van. I've driven it in Barcelona. It's basically a minivan variant of the Nissan Leaf. So you take the Nissan Leaf battery pack, drivetrain, motor, etc., 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 and you put that into the ENV200, which American viewers will probably know as the New York taxi of tomorrow. And in the UK, it's an NV200 minivan. It's a commercial vehicle as well. It's been sold as a petrol and a diesel vehicle for a very long time over here. It is now available in an electric version. You can get a fully commercial vehicle with 2 seats up front, and then, just a small cargo space. Well, small, fairly large cargo base by European standards in the back. You can get a crew version, which is like a 5-seat commercial vehicle with a slightly smaller cargo area in it, or you can get the Evalia. You can't get the Evalia in the UK, but you can get it in the rest of Europe, which is kind of your family minivan style, very suited to being a mini cab taxi. Had its crash test this week as part of the Euro NCAP's regular testing, and it only scored 3 stars out of 5. Now, I'd be really interested to see what you think about this, Rick, because you know, the gasoline version of this same vehicle, the NV200 rather than the ENV200, it got the same 3-star rating. It was marked down not because of its passenger protection. You know, it scored fairly well, moderately well. I mean, it wasn't excellent, but moderately well for interior passenger protection. The child protection especially was much better than the regular passenger protection. There were a few areas where, you know, if you were hit by a pole in the right way, the passenger might suffer from some abdominal injuries, etc., etc. But the exterior, the shape of the vehicle, was very upright, not very pedestrian friendly, but also it was marked down really heavily because it didn't have advanced safety technology. So it didn't have some of the advanced safety technologies that other cars are now including, designed to slow you down or stop you or keep control of the car in an emergency. Mm-hmm. Crash testing is becoming increasingly difficult, isn't it, to pass? How do we pass something like a 3-star crash rating? Because it's very easy for us to look at that and go, oh God, that's terrible. But from a daily point of view, you know, how do we deconstruct crash test ratings?
Well, it's just that crash testing is it's a scientific thing they do so that all cars are tested identically. And it's just a matter of passing exams, basically. You know, it's like if you go to school and you become an engineer, you pass X number of exams. Doesn't mean you're a good engineer when you came out. It just means you're good at passing those exams. So, you know, I think that there's way too much emphasis put on what the Consumer Reports crash test rating is or the safety ratings that are put out because they're based on situations. I think you need to use some common sense linked in with that as well.
Right.
You know, again, it's accident avoidance and other things are so important. But, you know, if the cars are all the same, you know, what are you going to do? There's no way you can test one. So you have to kind of rely on those test ratings, you know, when you make the decision. It's tough, you know. I don't know. I mean, you know, people look at the Tango and they say it's a death trap, you know. And I know for a fact that it's absolutely the opposite, and it doesn't have any of the the electronics and so forth to take care of braking and all that. It's designed to be driven by a car that knows how to drive, by a driver that knows how to drive.
Yeah.
You know, like if you're a race car driver, you'd feel completely at home with it, and you'd know how to avoid accidents and everything else. If you drive a Porsche, it's the same way. You know how it handles. You know where the weight is. You know when to be on the accelerator, when to be on the brakes. You know to brake in a straight line and all of that. But what they're trying to do is idiot-proof all these cars so that anybody can avoid a collision, no matter how stupid they are. You know,
it's a very fine line, because I was driving a Volkswagen recently with this City Assist on it, and it's got it's an adaptive cruise control that takes you right down to stop and allows you to drive in city. So you set the cruise control, you don't even think about it.
My daughter has a Subaru like that. It's quite interesting. You know, you just don't touch the accelerator pedal. You just cruise behind the car in front of you.
And when they stop, you stop, and there's a distance.
High speed and got a ticket because the car in front of her was too far away.
Well, that's one to make sure you don't do. I hadn't thought of that. All right, talking about Volkswagen, the GTE the Volkswagen Golf GTE plug-in hybrid was priced this week from €36,900 in Germany. It's €2,000 more expensive than the e-Golf. Interestingly, it's not at the moment planned to go to the US, although I was at the GTE launch this week in Switzerland, in Zurich, and I spoke to some Volkswagen executives, and they did say we haven't made our mind up 100%. There is still hope. But the thing that makes the Golf GTE such an interesting car is it does have an all-electric capability. It's about 75 kilowatt electric motor. Volkswagen claims a range of 50 kilometers, so that's 31 miles per charge. I would suggest, from my experience, it's easier to get 20 to 25 miles out of it, which is, again, enough for most people in cities. But, I mean, the question, again, is obviously we've got that complexity. But it does drive incredibly well. And I think this is going to be a halo car for Volkswagen. And I think it's going to be a halo car that gets more people on board with electric vehicles. Now, Lots of people would say, electric vehicles are fine. You don't need a plug-in hybrid as a transitionary step, but I know lots of people who wouldn't make that step. So do we think a car like this, 6.7 seconds 0 to 60, it's not fast by, the fastest of electric car standards, Rick, but do you think this is going to be a car that's going to get more people interested in plug-ins?
I do. I think there's, it depends on the family situation. In my situation, I can drive a Tango when I'm by myself. If we have the family, we drive the Leaf. And in an emergency, if we had to go long distance, we have to have petrol. We've got a Dodge Ram pickup truck. Worst tool for the job of driving, in any other situation. But again, it doesn't get used. And if you only have one car, I think you've really got to have something that you can go long distance in an emergency, just like the situation you pointed out. You need a plug-in, a plug-in hybrid. If you drive 20 miles to work every day back and forth, and you do that every day, and you can do that on pure electricity, then that's fantastic. And then at least when you want to make a long trip, you can do it by putting in petrol.
Right.
I think that there's room for all these different cars depending on the situation. But for anybody who has more than one car, I would say, not anybody, but most people who have more than one car, I think having one pure electric and another one that's either pure petrol or a plug-in hybrid would be the way to go. I think it just depends on how many cars you have.
Well, certainly here in the UK, not where I live, but in a lot of situations and a lot of housing developments, new housing developments, they're having very strange regulations. So they'll have like 0.75 car parking spaces per house. So they're anticipating some people.
0.75.
Yeah, 0.75 per house. So they're expecting some people.
There,
Yeah, so they're expecting something. You only have to look at some of the new developments we have in the UK. We've got some new developments not far from me, and they build the streets to these subdivisions wide enough for one and a bit cars. Even sometimes you can't have two cars passing one another.
Right.
And the driveways, they're big enough for one car, but not everybody has a driveway. Not everybody gets a garage. And so the idea is that they're trying to force people to own less cars, but at the same point, they're not necessarily giving you the public transport, etc., that you need. So,
it's just too expensive. When you look at the numbers of public transport versus private, it's like that Boston Big Dig thing. It's just astronomically out of proportion. And
right.
Yet, people don't mind paying tax dollars for public transit, thinking it's going to free up their highways, but it doesn't solve the problem. It's just so much more expensive, building more highways and all of that. Having the car the size for the job to be done, doubling highway lane capacity is by far the cheapest answer. And if we can, I said giving them away for free is 1/10 the cost, but there's no need to give them away for free. Like in Auckland, you could have, you can lease the cars out. People can keep them as their own car and lease them for 3 years or whatever, any amount of time they want. But this allows them the freedom to come and go when they want to and still use up less than half the space on the highway, solving that problem.
It does, and I think it's going to be it's going to be an interesting future. Let's put it like this. All right, let's move on to we're going to have another ad break now, and I'm going to tell you about the shop. If you've not been to the Transport Evolved shop now, you should go, because the Transport Evolved shop is the place where you can go and get your own Transport Evolved swag. I'm talking this baby. You can get your own t-shirts, you can get your own sweatshirts. You're not like this. This is mine. You can't have it. Michael's got one like this too, and so has Mark. These are the ones for the staff, but you can get one for your fans, and they're sweaters and sweatshirts and baseball caps and all sorts. We've seen some great shots of people who've bought cups and mouse mats, etc., just like donating to the Transport Evolved website. Anything you buy will get a little itty bitty cut, and that will help us move the website forward. Fun things, and hopefully mean that I don't have to have Diet Coca-Cola burps during the middle of that. But you get the idea. You can support us by getting something in return, and you get to wear it, put it on your car, whatever. Not the sweater, but you can get bumper stickers and all sorts. So check out that by going to the website at www.transportevolved.com, and here on the top right hand corner you can see, click on shop, and it will take you to the shop page. And I've got an old iPad, so it is taking a while, but you will see soon it goes to the shop. Here we go. And lots of cool things that you can buy. Hoodies, varsity sweatshirts, badges. You can even get mobile phone covers. Look, very, very cool. Check it out. www.transportevolved.com/shop. All right, we're on to the final part. And this is an interesting news story that just completely came out of the blue this week. Andy Palmer, pro EV Andy Palmer, has left Nissan to become the CEO of gas-guzzling Aston Martin. Rick, what's going on?
I don't know. That was news to me.
So this is like a...
Is he going to make electric Aston Martins, or is he just giving up the EV thing? I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know the answer to it either, and it worries me. It really does worry me. But Andy's been really pro-EV over the years. He's almost on that same level as... name's forgotten me now, and I can't think. Bob Lutz, almost that same kind of, not necessarily as big a figure as Bob Lutz, but Bob Lutz leaving GM was big, and Andy Palmer leaving Nissan is big because Andy's been so pro EV. He once famously claims that electric cars were dirty because of the coal-fired powered stations in Australia. Bullshit.
Yeah,
To a reporter in Australia. Now, not every CEO or executive would come out with that. And Andy did. He's vice president of Nissan at the time, I think. He might not have been vice president of Nissan, actually. No, vice president, I think, was a bit later. He became vice president. But still, we're going to miss him. And I'm completely... Can I share with you why I am so cross about this? I had a phone call a couple of weeks ago from one of Nissan's PR team going, we've read Transport Evolved, we really like what you're doing, really like what you're saying about the industry, you've got your finger on the pulse, blah, 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 buttered me up. Would you like an interview with Andy Palmer? Well, duh. Yes, please. Yes, I would like an interview with Andy Palmer. I'd like to talk about autonomous driving. I'd like to talk about electric cars and all of this. They said fine, and we arranged a date. Having a very busy summer, we decided that it would be best to wait until the 5th, when my kids were back at school and everything was back to normal. And then last week, at the beginning of last week or the end of the previous week, I had an email from the person who'd set the interview up going, yeah, Andy's changed his schedule a little bit. Can we move the meeting? And I said, that's fine, no problem at all. And they said, well, he still wants to meet with you, still wants to talk to you about electric cars, but it'll probably be a couple of weeks' time. Fine, that's great. And then blow me if this news just doesn't come out of the complete bombshell.
Oh my gosh.
And so I'm not going to be able to interview him about Nissan, and I'm so upset about it. But I do wish him all the best. CEO of Aston Martin, though. Does this mean...
Maybe, even Formula One cars are going electric to some extent. There's lots going on, and maybe Aston Martin wants to go that direction too, and maybe they give an offer that could make their flagship car electric or partial electric or whatever. So who knows? It may not all be bad.
It might be a good thing. But the interesting thing is, Aston Martin is not making a profit at the moment. It's not doing very well as a car maker. So Andy, that's his first challenge, to obviously turn Aston Martin around. But the second thing is obviously to do something about the city cars. They did try and do the... Did you hear of the Aston Martin Signet?
No, I'm not familiar with that.
Okay, so the Toyota IQ, that little tiny
I know the IQ because
car.
It's one of only 2 cars that have a suspension that I could actually use to build tangos with.
And they're not making them anymore.
That's unfortunate. I knew it was writing was on the wall. So now the Spark is the only one that has a front suspension that'll fit. So I'm just looking for ways to build a less expensive Tango in volume as soon as we get funding. So that's why I know about that car.
So the IQ, they obviously made by Toyota. Aston Martin for a couple of years bought IQs, basically brand new IQs, stripped them bare, and then put 10 cows inside and £50,000 worth of accoutrement, and then sold them to rich wealthy Londoners who needed a car that complied with the congestion charging exemption, because the IQ of course is low emissions enough to be allowed in the centre of London without having to pay congestion charging tax. And they sold a very limited number, and they're not making them anymore, surprisingly, and obviously Toyota's carrying the project. But it did make me wonder if we're going to see an electric Aston at some point. And of course, James Bond, if he ends up in an electric Aston, that will be very interesting. All right, final story of the day. Blink is switching its charging from per hour to per kilowatt hour. It's a very subtle change. People might not understand what that difference is, Rick. Maybe you could explain to us the difference between the two.
Yeah, I mean, kilowatt hours is how much energy you're using, and that makes a lot more sense in charging by the hour. Actually, the charge point gives the owner of the station the choice of by the hour, by the kilowatt hour, or a little of both, or whatever. And that's really the perfect way. I've been a little frustrated with Blink, frankly. Less power. I think the Tango can charge at 40 amps, and all the charge stations are generally limited to 30, but Blink was limited to 24. I hope they're fixing that, because it's just a really slow way to charge if you have a more powerful car. But back to the how to charge by kilowatt hour by the hour. If you have a car that charges very slowly, obviously by the hour is going to, you're going to lose out pretty badly. And also, if you don't know how long you're going to be plugged in, charging by the kilowatt hour makes all the sense in the world, because you pay so much for electricity. In Spokane, we only pay 5 cents a kilowatt hour, so it's extremely cheap to drive an electric car here, under 2 cents a mile. Other parts of the country, typically 10 cents or more per kilowatt hour. But if you pay 10 cents, then maybe it's about 4 cents a mile to drive. So it makes sense to charge for the energy usage, not by the time that you're sitting there plugged in my opinion, unless if you're in a very expensive parking area where, by the hours you're really paying for the space and the electricity is inconsequential, then I can see by the hour. But I think letting the people who are paying or who install the stations to make the decision how they want to charge makes more sense than anything. And when you go to a charge point on your iPhone or iPad and you look up a charge point station, you can see immediately how they're going to charge you, and you can make your decision on where you want to charge based on what you're going to do. If you want to leave it overnight, obviously you don't want to be paying by the hour.
No, you don't.
It's just a matter of personal choice depending on what you're doing and how long you want to be plugged in, which is the best deal.
And I think that the challenge is a lot of these people, a lot of states don't allow charging by the kilowatt hour. Because it's essentially reselling electricity.
I see.
So
okay,
a lot of people are saying that actually this is going to cost them more money, because Blink in states where it can't charge per kilowatt hour has put up the cost of charging. So if you live in a state where it is allowed that you can be charged per kilowatt hour, the cost of charging, if you've got an older car like a first gen Leaf, will be less. But if you've got a car in a state where you can't be charged per kilowatt hour, the cost's gone up. But to be honest, I generally don't charge. I don't know. I mean, I do. At the moment, my kids have just started. My daughter started a new school. It is 20-mile round trip for me to take her to school, and I loop that in with taking my son to school and doing other stuff. I'll do 50 miles between 7 in the morning and noon when I come home. And then I put the Volt back on charge for 2 hours, and then I do the afternoon run. So I'm doing 70, 80 miles a day in EV mode. Sure. And I'm not having to charge up away from home. But yesterday I stopped somewhere and did a rapid charge top up because it was free. And then I stopped in and I chose a local park and ride site in Bath, because I had to nip over to Bath. And again, the charging was free, the parking was cheap, I didn't mind. But I'm getting to the point now where I'm not going to certain places because of the cost of charging, and I'd rather go somewhere where I know my charging is going to be cheap than try and go somewhere
I only use charging very rarely. If I'm out of town, or say I'm doing demonstrations with a Tango in San Francisco or somewhere, then I need to worry about charging. But to tell you the truth, my normal day, I never use a public charge station. It's like my iPhone. I mean, I plug it in every night. It's ready in the morning. I use it all day. I plug it in at night and done. It's so simple. I think somebody told me it takes 5 seconds to charge your car, and that's the way I look at it. I plug it in at home. It takes me 5 seconds to plug it in and unplug it, and I'm done. There's nothing else to do. I never go to a fuel station. It's so much more convenient than filling up with fuel. It's just
the way, isn't it? It is the way.
It is. It's 5 seconds for a fill up every night.
There you go.
And you'd never go to a public charge station. Why would you want to?
Well,
As long as you're using the tool for the job it was designed for, which is making your daily, round trips. You don't need to plug into a public charge station.
It is true. All right. Well, there is one other story that I want to just mention that isn't on the list today, and that's the woman or the gentleman whose Model S was stolen this week in LA. And they were able to watch their car going down the road using the smartphone app. And they were able to use that to help capture the guy, obviously with police help. And I just thought that was brilliant, being able to watch your car going down the motorway or the freeway or through town and knowing that things were going to be on a record. On a more serious note, and I know that a lot of people follow me on Twitter, I tweeted something the other day. I probably should put a disclaimer on this. There was a gentleman in Norfolk, which is my home county, in East Anglia, who died tragically earlier this year. He was a biker, and he died. He was on a single carriageway, which is one lane of traffic in each direction. He was going faster than the legal limit. He was 30 miles above, nearly 40 miles above the legal limit, speeding. He had his camera, as a lot of bikers do, recording the trip, and he was hit by a car crossing in front of him, and tragically died instantly as a consequence of the impact. That video is now available online, and as is his story. His wife, his mother and father have essentially worked with the Norfolk police to publish this. The purpose behind this is, and there's nothing gruesome in it really, it's just a very chilling video. If you are a biker, if you are a car driver, I'm going to ask you to watch it, not with children around, but do please watch it, because I think it's really important. As a motoring journalist, I very often, have to push cars to their limits, push bikes to their limits, and I think it's very, very all too easy to forget that, if you're on a motorbike doing 100 miles an hour and a car doing 100 miles an hour, if something goes wrong, nothing can save you, nothing can stop you, apart from your own common sense. And it's really changed my outlook on how we use the roads, and just double checking and thinking about, do I need to speed? Do I need to drive in this way? Is there somebody coming across me? And if it all, by watching that, means that you all take a couple of extra milliseconds to double and triple check things through and become safer drivers as a consequence, I think you should watch it. And I did, and I hope that it is going to make me a safer driver. It's certainly really changed the way I think about using the road. Thank you very much for joining us today, Rick. Where can people find out more about you and the cars that you make?
Pleasure. Commutercars.co.nz is probably the best, and it'll lead back to the website commutercars.com, or commutercars.com, and then click on New Zealand to get to the new site. I think the new site has the best information on it. A lot of pricing, a lot of explanation about why the car is so expensive now and how cheap it could be in the future. All of that's laid out as a buy, lease, or rent scenarios, all of those.
Cool.
It's just a matter of getting the funding to build it in enough volume that we can get the price down.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you will come back again. And in a couple of weeks' time, we'll be able to send video back to our guests. Rick's done a fantastic job. He can't see me. He can only hear me. And that's because of the equipment we have here in the Transport Evolved studio. You cannot see beyond... I can see everybody, but they can't see me. So we've got some new equipment on the way that should have arrived that enables our guests to see the video that's going out now. At the moment, you can't see anything, and this is what it really looks like. Hello. This is the other camera. So you can see that we're still in the studio. We're still in the shed under the table under the stairs, or the room under the stairs. But we've had a bit of a tweak, and I hope you prefer this look. Is a lot better, I think. Let me know what you think of the studio. Let me know if there's any tweaks you need to make, and if you're a graphic design artist who would like to help me make a 2 video version of this set, get in touch, because that would be very useful. That really is it for the day. Thank you to everyone for joining me. Please subscribe to our channel. You can do so by going to youtube.com/Transport Evolved, or you can search for Transport Evolved on Twitter. We are on various other aggregation sites as well, and I think we are on Stitcher. Several people have asked us, are you on Stitcher? Yes, we are. Until then, until next week, thanks for joining us, And don't forget to stay juiced up. See you soon. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, Nikki. Bye-bye.